Good afternoon. I will call to order the December 5th meeting of the Minneapolis City Planning Commission. My name is Matt Brown. I serve as president of the commission. I'm joined today by Commissioners Magrino, Slack, Sweezy, Lupke-Pier, Reland, and Rockwell. This time I'll ask that you silence any mobile devices. And our first item of business today is to approve the actions from the November 14th meeting. May I have a motion to approve those actions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Our next item of business is to organize the agenda. We'll determine which items will be discussed and which will be continued, which will be considered on consent. You can find hard copies of the agenda in the hallway. Starting at the top of the agenda, item number 1 is the Ramblin' Rose Bed and Breakfast at 306 2nd Street Northeast. That's a conditional use permit for a bed and breakfast. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put item 1 on consent. Item 2 is at 861 East Hennepin Avenue. That is a rezoning. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put item 2 on consent. Item 3 is at 4210 East 34th Street. That's a conditional use permit for a contractor's office. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put item 3 on consent. Item 4 is at 5405 and 5407 Xerxes Avenue South. That's a minor subdivision for single-family structures and variance to lot area. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 4? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 5 is the RCCS addition at 3805 Washington Avenue North. That's a site plan review for a building addition there. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 6 is the Bancroft Elementary addition and renovation at 1315 East 38th Street. Several applications for an addition to a school. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 6? Seeing no one, we'll put item 6 on consent. Item 7 is a plaza and surface parking lot at 1203 through 1207 Washington Avenue South. A couple applications related to that. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 7? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 8 is a 4th floor addition at 233 Park Avenue and 700 and 724 South 3rd Street. Conditional use permit to amend a PUD and site plan review for a building addition there. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 8? Item 8, yes, we can discuss item 8. Item 9 is the 4700 Cedar Retail Addition and Renovation at 4700 through 4714 Cedar Avenue. And that is a site plan review for a building addition. We'll continue item 9 to the January 9th meeting at the request of the applicant, so we will not be considering item 9 today. Item 10 is the micro apartments at 2618 Essex Street Southeast. Several applications for a new multifamily building there. Is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 10? All right, we will discuss item 10. And let's see here. Finally, item 11 is the Rex 26 at 2601 through 2621 Lindale Avenue South. Several applications for a new mixed-use building there. We'll discuss item 11. Just so I have a sense, are any of you here to speak on item 11? Okay, so several. I figured there would be a few people here for that. So we'll discuss item 11. So our agenda as amended is as follows. Items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 will be on consent. Item 9 will be continued to January 9th, and we will discuss items 8, 10, and 11. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. Next, we will consider our Committee of the Whole consent agenda from November 17th. And Commissioner Slack, do you have an update for us?
Thank you, President Brown. There were 6 specific items that we heard at the Committee of the Whole on November 17th. Item number 1 was a land sale, part of the vacant housing recycling program, and the sale of the property was 3334 James Avenue North. Item number 2 was a land sale as part of the vacant housing recycling program again. The properties were 317 26th Avenue North, 3631 Colfax Avenue North, 3257 Logan Avenue North, 3542 Lindale Avenue North, and 3825 Bloomington Avenue South. Item number 3, again, was part of the vacant housing recycling program, and that property was 1718 Fillmore Street Northeast. Item number 4, again, was part of the vacant housing recycling program, and the 2 properties were 606 33 Avenue North and 2127 Aldrich Avenue North. And then item number 5 was a land sale at 4530 Bryant Avenue North. Those previous 5 items were all, the recommended motion was to approve the staff recommendation that the items were consistent with the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth. Item number 6 was a series of land sales, 2601, 2607, 2609, 2615, 2617, 2621, 2625, and 2629 University Avenue Northeast. And that recommended motion was to approve the staff report that those items, or that this item was inconsistent with the Minneapolis Plan for Sustainable Growth.
Okay, and so a lot of land sales there. I will take that as a motion to find that items 1 through 5 are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Item 6 is inconsistent. Is there a second? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. Next, may I have a motion to continue item 9 to the January 9th, 2017 meeting? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Item 9 is continued to January 9th. Next, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of our meeting. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing for the items on the consent agenda. Again, that is items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Is there anyone wishing to speak on any of those items? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our items for discussion. We will start with item 8, which is an addition at 233 Park Avenue. And we can start with a presentation from staff, which is Ms. Dvorak.
This is an application for a project that you reviewed last July of 2015 for a planned unit development. It includes the Old Spaghetti Factory building, the Thresher Square building, which is a local and national landmark, and then the construction of a new 6-story mixed-use building, ground floor commercial, the Trader Joe's grocery store, and then residential above. That was a planned unit development. Tonight, they are proposing a 4-story, 8,400 square foot addition to the Old Spaghetti Factory building. That is the only change proposed tonight. The planned unit development, or the application, I should say, does not require any exceptions to the zoning code, so no alternatives are being requested, therefore no amenities are required. We did find that the project is in compliance with our code and a comprehensive plan, and we are recommending approval. So this is the addition. Washington is up on the screen. It's set back from Washington and then set back from Park Avenue. Again, it accommodates 8,400 square feet of office space for an existing tenant within the building. They will be moving there on the 3rd, and then they'll also expand up to the 4th floor. And just to show you what that looks like in rendering and in plan. So here you can see that it is this 4-story addition. It is a dark gray metal that they're proposing to use. This is the elevation from Washington. This is the new building that is now under construction. This is your elevation along Park Avenue with the existing Thresher Square building. And then these are the elevations. This is the elevation that you will see on from the south side, and then this is what you would see from that new building being constructed next door. And just for a rendering perspective tonight, that is the building if looking from Park and Washington Avenue. You can see the 4th floor addition. And then just looking westbound on Washington Avenue with the new building here in the foreground, that is the addition. So again, as I said, no alternatives to the code being requested, no amenities needing to be provided, and we are recommending approval.
All right, commissioners, are there any questions of staff? And Hillary, maybe you can clarify. So this particular addition did receive a certificate of appropriateness from the Heritage Preservation Commission, or was that considered as part of the entire project?
This building is not a landmark, so it does not require review by the Preservation Commission. Only the Thresher Square development, which did receive approvals for their the conversion to the hotel with some minor modifications to that building that did go through HPC prior to Planning Commission in July of 15.
All right, thank you. If there are no further questions, I'll open the public hearing on this item. And if you'd like to come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Ryan Strohstein. I'm a resident at 607 Washington Lost, so it's right across Park Street from the Old Spaghetti Factory. So mainly my concern is, right now I look above Old Spaghetti Factory, and now I'll be looking into Old Spaghetti Factory. So, concern is obviously affecting my view and potential property values. So while I'm not totally opposed to this, I mean, I think it looks nice, and it is. I like that it's set back on the roof, so that sort of helps. But yeah, my main concern is really just affecting the property values from something going above a height that I was expecting it to go.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we have 2 applications before us on this item, the conditional use permit and site plan review. Are there any further questions, or would someone like to start things off with a motion? All right. All right, Commissioner Vreeland is moving staff recommendation to approve both items A and B. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If there is none, I might just quickly address the comments made by the speaker. Overall, this addition fits well within the height and bulk limitations of the zoning code. So it would be somewhat difficult for us to not allow a building of this height at this location. So that's kind of where we're coming from. Just wanted to mention that. Commissioner Sweezy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to disclose, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, and I do intend to vote on this, but my son does work at the old spaghetti factory.
Thank you for mentioning that. If there is no further discussion, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Bender? Aye. Gagnon?
Aye.
Kronzer?
Aye.
Fitzgibbon?
Aye.
Magrino?
Aye.
Rockwell?
Aye.
Slack?
Aye.
Sweezy?
Aye.
Vreeland?
Aye.
9-0.
And that motion carries. Our next item for discussion is item 10, the micro apartments at 2618 Essex Street Southeast, and staff is Ms. Steiner.
Commissioners, this is a proposal at 2618 Essex Street Southeast for your consideration tonight. Some background on the property. The property is located near 27th Avenue and Essex Street in the Prospect Park neighborhood. The property is zoned R5 multifamily. In terms of land use features, the property is located within the growth center of the University of Minnesota. It's 2 blocks from the commercial corridor on University Avenue and 1 block from the Stadium Village Activity Center. The proposal tonight is a 4-story, 25-unit building with 9 parking stalls. This building would replace an existing triplex on the site. The proposed parking stalls are at grade and under the building, and they're accessed from a driveway on Essex Street. Here's the site plan for the building. There's a adjacent surface parking lot that's located to the north of the property, and then there are residential properties located to the south and west. As you can see the driveway accessing from Essex, and then if you see the first floor plan, you can see how the parking is set up. So it is located behind the stairway and the manager's office, so not directly between the street, but it is under the building and at grade. And then there's one unit at grade as well. Here are the upper floor plans. The applicant is proposing micro units, so there's 23 small units that meet our minimum gross floor area size for a studio. They're just over 350 square feet in size, and then there's also 2 larger 2-bedroom units proposed. These are the proposed elevations of the building on the bottom, and then fitting into its context on top. The elevations of the other sides. And then the land use applications that are required for this proposal, there's a number of variances required as well as site plan review. The variances are related to parking and the required yards. And I'll just briefly summarize the analysis for all of those applications. So for the parking variances, the request was to decrease the minimum parking requirement from 14 to 9 spaces. And then there's also a variance request to increase the amount of spaces that are allowed to be compact sized. Staff found that the driveway access on Essex Street, which is required or is necessary because the site is on a block that doesn't have a public alley, as well as the yard requirements on all 4 sides and the subject lot's width and lot area are all practical difficulties that limit the developable area of the site that were not created by the applicant and therefore limit the amount of parking that can be accommodated on the site. There's also policy recommendations for this site that guide this property to incorporate high-density housing, and the site is well served by transit and well served for bicycling. In terms of the yard variances, the applicant is requesting variances of all 4 yards. So for the north side, the north interior side, the request is from 11 feet to 10 feet for the building, 3 feet for the parking area, and 0 feet for a small patio or walkway. And then for the south, it's 11 feet to 9 feet for the building, and that's just at the upper floors. For the west, which is the rear yard, the request is from 11 feet to 9 feet for a mechanical lift, which sticks out about 2 feet into the required yard, but it's only 10 feet wide. And then 3 feet for the ground level patio for that one ground level unit, and then 0 feet for that same patio or walkway that also needs the variance on the north side. For the east, which is the front of the property, there's an established front yard requirement of 18 feet and 10 inches. That's based on the adjacent property to the south. Typically, the requirement would be 15 feet. The applicant is meeting the location of the building, or the building placement meets that 18 feet, 10-inch requirement. However, the applicant is proposing a canopy design feature for the entrance, which extends out to 13 feet from the front property line, so it requires a variance. In staff's analysis, we found that these are reasonable requests for yard variances, as the site is uniquely limited due to the lack of an alley on the site, as well as the lot area and lot width. The site, like I said, for the parking variances is guided for high-density housing, which this is. It's located near an activity center in a commercial corridor and within the growth center of the University of Minnesota. And we found that the request would not be detrimental to those using the property or those using property adjacent to this. For site plan review, alternative compliance was required for visual interest standards and the parking and loading, landscaping, and screening standards. So staff has recommended, and you can see those in the images to the right of the screen. So that is on the top, that's the south elevation, and there's 2 sections of 37-foot wide blank walls. And then on the bottom, that's the north section. That's that parking area that I mentioned. The applicant has indicated that it wouldn't be feasible to incorporate garage doors, and so that parking is not screened from the adjacent residentially zoned property. So staff is recommending 2 conditions of approval related to those alternative compliance requests. The first is that they would incorporate some kind of metal mesh or lattice material that would allow for the growing of vines on those blank walls on the south elevation, and then that they would provide adequate screening that's at least 6 feet in height and 95% opaque as required by the zoning code. That would screen the parking area from the adjacent property to the north. And there is adequate area to incorporate something like a cedar fence along their northern property line. And in terms of public comments, only one letter was received by the time of this meeting, and that letter was in support of this application or these applications. So I'll stop there, and we are recommending approval of all of the applications with the stated conditions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Kronzer.
So on the building elevations, it references exposed natural gray unpainted concrete. Is that cast in place concrete or is that CMU units?
My understanding it would be cast in place concrete or concrete panels, actually, but the applicant can speak more to that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing on this item. I'd like to ask the applicant to speak first.
Good evening. My name is William Wells. I am the project architect, and joined by Josh. Tonight, he is the developer owner of this project. Is 25 units of micro apartments, 4-story building. I did want to mention that all the ceiling heights are 12 feet or higher in all of the units, and there will be some lofted spaces. So the units are really designed in a way that trying to maximize affordability and livability. And we're probably going to be marketing them more towards grad students and medical students at the University of Minnesota. To answer your question, on the front of the building, it is a poured concrete panel, but then on the sides of the building, it would be an unpainted CMU, if that's what's currently proposed tonight. We have no objections to any of the staff recommendations. We think they're all very reasonable, and I haven't received any negative feedback from anyone in the public, but I'm certainly willing to respond to any comments or questions.
All right. Commissioner Lupke-Peer, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have two questions, actually. One, what is the linear footage of the unpainted CMU, and how visible is that?
It would be that's the south east side of the building for the 9 parking spaces. It's approximately 80 feet.
Was it the whole length of that facade?
Not the whole length of the facade.
Just the central parking
Just the central
portion?
bump-in piece where the parking is.
Okay. And then my second question was, I was looking at sheet A2, and there's a note regarding removal of a fence along a property line, but I also noted that condition condition 5 calls for incorporating screening possibly into and installing a fence. So which is it? Is there a fence that's going to be there or not?
Are you asking about the staff?
I'm asking you if you plan to put a fence in. According to sheet A2, there's a note that says there's an existing fence, but you plan to take it down to use it as a shared alley serving 2 parcels.
I'm not sure. There is an existing barbed wire fence that's sort of damaged, and I'm going to let Josh speak to what the plan is to do with that fence.
Yeah, I think that maybe came from when we were, discussing with the planning review folks about it's kind of a unsightly fence. I believe it's our neighbors. We have been talking with the neighboring property owner about potentially taking that fence down, which we have maintained since we've owned the property, cutting weeds and trees that are growing in there for that we can access through our property, but hoping that we may be able to get some type of joint easement down the road, making both of the properties more accessible. That said, we also are talking with the neighbors to the south about some opportunities to work with them, including purchasing their property. So that if that fence may not be an issue, but bottom line is we'd like to take it down since we've been maintaining the unsightly condition since we've owned the property.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any further questions of the applicant? If there are none, we can move on to other speakers, and please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi there, my name is Connor Casey. I'm a tenant in this unit currently. We've been there for about a year and a half now. We've had problems with property owner and the management in the past. We've received no word other than the posting on our property that the house will be torn down. I hope not to waste your time. I'm not sure really who I'm to reach out to. I want to know basically, what are my rights as a tenant at this point, and what do I need to expect? My security deposit, it's going to be torn down. So I hope I'm not wasting your time asking improper questions, but these are things that I would need to know. I'm just kind of hoping for some guidance.
Yeah, thanks. And, overall, obviously our role is really to look at the zoning compliance of a project, although, so I would certainly say to work with your landlord on what the timing is. Maybe I could just ask the applicant in general, maybe you could just explain some of the timing.
Yeah, I mean, the timing would not affect the existing lease, and apologies, I've not heard from the tenants. Otherwise, I would have addressed these. The word hasn't gotten to me. I have a property manager. Okay, well, yeah, I understand this would not be the forum to have this discussion. I do have a property manager, and obviously I would have avoided this coming up if I could, but there's a lease in place that would be trump any kind of development plans that I have. I know that, so I could not begin any development that would cause confliction with that legal contract that I have in place.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Did you have another?
I'm sorry. I'm just.
No. Yeah.
Where do I go from here? Am I strictly, fine with these guys? Is there somebody in the city, that I'm just going to have as kind of a safety net for me and my resident tenants?
Mr. Wittenberg?
I would recommend, sir, starting with the Regulatory Services Department and housing inspections and housing licensing. They may be able to guide you appropriately.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I hope I haven't wasted it.
And Commissioner Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also just wanted to add, I'm sure your council member would welcome a phone call. That's Councilmember Gordon's ward. And we also fund as the city an organization called Homeline, and that's meant to be a resource for renters to ask questions just like this one. It's called Homeline. And you could call any of us, but Councilmember Gordon is your council member.
All right. And if there is no one else who would like to speak on this item, I'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, are there any further questions, or would someone like to start us off with a motion? All right, we have a motion to approve items A through G. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Lupifer.
I'd like to just quickly address a couple items in G, if I may.
Yeah.
Number one, I think I'd like to add a condition 6 that requests that an alternative material other than plain face painted CMU be used along that facade. It's already there's a lot of leeway being given for the exposed parking on the ground floor of this, so I just think a material that I would consider to be quite unattractive to look at shouldn't necessarily be something we allow in such a length. So I would be curious as to whether people would be willing to entertain that as an amendment. And then I just wanted to reiterate that point 5 does call for the owner to install a fence on the north side of the shared property line. So I just want to encourage them to work with staff to make sure that that happens, or if they don't intend for that to happen, to speak now or forever hold their peace. So those are my request is an added condition 6.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to modify the conditions of approval for item G, the site plan review, one related to replacing the plain CMU with a different material, and another related to the fence. Is there any further discussion on that motion to add those conditions? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries to amend those conditions. Is there any further discussion on any of the items A through G? Commissioner Magrino.
Yeah, just a quick comment that I thought that this was a pretty good example of what you can do in R5 zoning on a lot that's just, a single family house. I think it's a ambitious size project. I hope we see more stuff like that around the city.
All right, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to approve items A through G with some modifications to the conditions on item G. And clerk, please call the roll.
Freeland.
Aye.
Swayze.
Aye.
Slack.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Lipke-Peer.
Aye.
Cronzer.
Aye.
Gagnon.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
9-0.
All right, and that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on item 10. The next item for discussion is item 11, which is Rex 26 at 2601 through 2621 Lindale Avenue South. And staff is Mr. Hanauer.
Sorry about this. Good afternoon, Commission. So, the Rex hardware project, we have the 9 applications that are required for the project. Staff is supportive of those applications, the 2 rezoning, the conditional use permit, the variances, and the site plan review, to allow for the 5-story, 77-unit, 20,000 square foot mixed-use building at the southeast corner of 26th and Lindale on a commercial corridor. As you can see in this comparison, you saw this project twice at committee of the whole reviews, and the applicant incorporated a lot of that feedback in this proposal. They lowered the height by an entire floor. It's going from what was considered a 6-story building to 5 stories. I can explain, it's actually 4 floors. I can explain that in a bit. Eliminated 14,000 square feet of gross floor area, and that reduced that floor area ratio from 3.2 to 2.8. And then they really simplified the building exterior materials, going with current proposal is a brick and that metal panel. The metal panel being something similar that you see to the Walker Library in Uptown. Also, as I pointed out in the staff report, this is in the new expanded pedestrian-oriented overlay district. They weren't required to meet a lot of those requirements, but they did. They incorporated pedestrian scale lighting, lowered that window sill height for the first floor commercial. They exceed their window percentage on the first floor for both 26th and Lindale. They're exceeding their bike parking requirement for the non-residential portion of the project, and then having a building entrance at the corner. And I'll move on and be succinct, but just also want to note a few other things. All below grade parking, which isn't often the case in new projects, the high quality building materials, strong building presence at the corner, what we want to see for a building in a PO district, and recessed and projecting balconies, and have a first floor awning at 12 feet to really try to relate to the neighboring commercial buildings. So to talk to the applications, staff is supportive of the request to go to C2 zoning for the entire site. Designated mixed use for the future land use map, and the policies really support having mixed use buildings with the retail first floor and residential above. The zoning surrounding this area is also consistent with the proposed C2 zoning, with all the other 3 corners of 26 and Lindale having C1 or C4 zoning. And with the addition of the pedestrian-oriented overlay district, that will prohibit or really restrict a lot of auto-oriented uses coming to this site if this current proposal doesn't come to fruition. Conditional use permit, the request to go from 4 stories, 56 feet, to 5 stories, 62 feet. We are supportive of that as well. It reads as a 4-floor building, and it's given the height of that first floor being greater than 20 feet. That's why it's considered 2 stories. The height of that first floor is 23 feet, so just slightly over. But staff is supportive of that request, given that something that we noted in the report was that
99% of this building complies with that 56-foot height requirement. It's just the elevator overrun, that gray portion here, that is at 62 feet. So we really feel that the applicant worked to try to fit this building in with the context of the zoning and the surrounding area. Also recognize the U-shaped design helps break up the building along Lindale, and the density is in line with the small area plan guidance, 105 units per, 105 dwelling units per acre. The guidance is 40 to 120. And as shown on this context of the developments along Lindale Avenue, the floor area ratio is within a lot of and lower than developments that were in the activity center a couple blocks to the south, and the development that happened at the corner of Franklin and Lindale. So I kind of talked about the for the variance for the floor area ratio going from 2.38 to 2.8, kind of made points of the support of that variance request, given the context, given the previous developments before here along the commercial corridor. We want to see this type of development in this area. And I'll just point out for the yard variances, the 3 yard variances. First, the only portion of the building for the first floor that is requiring a front yard setback variance is that portion nearest this home to the south of the lot. They are required to meet the established front yard setback. They're at 21 feet. They need to be at 31 feet for the first 25 feet, if that makes sense. So it's just the portion that's outlined in red that is needing the setback variance. Also, the rear or the interior setback is required to be 13 feet. They're at 4.5 feet. Going to the second floor elevation, I'll just note they are required, given that there's residential uses on the floors above, to be at 13 feet for this rear yard setback, but they're at 5.5 feet where there's window openings. The lot is unique in terms